Hey, good evening. It is November 22nd, 2023, Thanksgiving Eve. And many of you know the story about the day I shook hands with the President of the United States. But I just wanted to kind of relive and regurgitate some of the memories that I have of the day I shook hands with the president 60 years ago. And my brother and I, Ken, Ken Irving, he was 6 years old. I was 10 years old. And our mother took us out of school and said, hey, it was a Friday. It was a cool November morning, and said, we're going to go see if we can see the President of the United States of America. And we saw him and we got to shake his hand. But, we went for 50 years without ever seeing a picture of us with the president. And it was 50 years, so it was 2013. In the spring of that year, a producer from California called my brother, and he'd read an article that had been written 25 years before on the 25th anniversary about two brothers in Fort Worth who shook hands with the president and the first lady. And he asked Ken some questions, and then he called me and asked me some questions and said, hey, I'm going to have a crew there in a couple of months, and I would like to meet you two guys and take you out to Carswell Air Force Base. I think by then it was NASJRB, but he got all the clearances and everything. And we actually went out on the tarmac to the place that we had been to when we shook hands with the president. Because those who are from Fort Worth know that on November the 21st, that evening, the president and his entourage came to Fort Worth. They spent the night it was then the Hotel Texas. They had a breakfast with him, and he made a speech out in front of the Hotel Texas, and that's right across from where the Tarrant County or whatever the convention center is now. I think it's Fort Worth Convention Center or whatever. But he made a speech, and then that's when he went to Carswell. I had a motorcade going to Carswell. Well, in 2013, the producer was working on the documentary, a National Geographic documentary called JFK, The Final Hours. And he took us out there to Carswell, and this is part of whenever he was doing the interview. But I just wanted to play a clip here that is from that documentary. So I hope the sound and everything's working okay.
35-minute ride, the motorcade arrived at Carswell Air Force Base with a short flight to Dallas. Ten-year-old Rick Irving and his 6-year-old brother Ken were there with their mother.
We started seeing a lot of people scurrying around Air Force One, and then the sirens got closer and closer. And then all of a sudden, the president's limousine stopped at the end of the rope line, and he and Jackie got out and started shaking hands. And my mother pushed us right next to the line as he was coming down and said, put your hands out, put your hands out. And so we put our hands out and shook hands with the president and then with Mrs. Kennedy.
I remember her hand more than anything. Even though I was 6 years old, she felt very feminine, small hand, her white glove.
But one of the things that I remember was how warm his hand was. He had ridden from downtown in an open car. And for a kid that was 10 years old, I thought, it was, how could he have such warm hands?
Part of the Kennedy persona is that the Kennedys obviously loved and trusted each other, but they didn't express any real physical affection in public. But there was a moment at Carswell Air Force Base when Kennedy grabbed Jackie's hand. They held hands for just a few seconds, and very few photographers caught it. But it was a magic moment for all Kennedy fans.
But anyway, that's just a clip where Ken and I were interviewed. But this picture, we never saw a picture until 2013. And the film producer sent us a film clip that was taken of the crowd and said, see if you can identify where you might have been. And so we looked at it and picked out what we thought was us. He had his guys in the studio capture that picture or take it out of that film. And so we had a picture of us with the president. And then that kind of intrigued me. And I went to the University of Texas at Arlington to the archives, and I found this picture. And I'm on the far right as you're looking at that picture, getting ready to shake hands with the president. But we shook hands with the president. We were so excited. I mean, that was the most famous person that we had ever been with or seen, the president of the United States of America. And one thing about that picture is that I didn't remember that I had my Cub Scout uniform on until I saw that picture. So, we watched Air Force One taxi off the tarmac and then take off. And we stayed out of school that day. And my mom, she worked for the Fort Worth Welcome Service. So she would take some coupons and a box of Miss Beard's bread and call on newcomers to Fort Worth. So she had some appointments to go to. And she went to the first appointment, and then it'd last about 15 or 20 minutes. She'd go in the home, and Ken and I would be in the car. And about the third appointment, she was in there, and she came out, and she was crying. And we said, Mama, why are you crying? And she said, the president got killed. And oh, my soul, for a 10-year-old boy to have just touched the president and seen the president right there at Carswell, that was a shock to us, because we had just witnessed a lot of historic stuff. This picture here was the last time that JFK ever entered Air Force One alive. And that the pink dress that Jackie had on, we saw that. And I've done some research, and it said that that dress is in the National Archives, and it won't be released for 100 years. So on the 100th anniversary, the family can decide what they want to do with it. But the pillbox hat is a mystery because it's not with the dress. They think that sometime Jackie might have given it to her assistant, but they really don't know. But anyway, there was just a cloud of darkness and sadness covering our country. Of course, we didn't have the news media we have now that's 24/7, but we did have the radio and TV. And so we were all glued to the radio and TV. I know that evening, we went over to some friend's house, and we just sat there the kids sat on the floor, and the adults, sat there and just watching news account after news account. Of course, we only had back then 3 channels. We had NBC, ABC, and CBS, and maybe Channel 11, KTVT. But it was great, just a great time of sadness to know that all that had transpired, and to have seen all the history that day, to watch the news account of the motorcade in Dallas, and then to see some of these pictures that were starting to surface of the limousine taking off and the Secret Service man going up to get in the car and protect Jackie. And then, of course, on Air Force One, Lyndon Johnson getting sworn in as the 36th president of the United States. But that was just such an emotional day for a 10-year-old kid, going from so excited to so sad. And then, on Sunday morning, another big historic thing happened whenever it was on live television and Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald. And that was, all of a sudden, here's the guy that they said was the lone assassin. And there's been theory after theory, and all these people have all these theories about more than one gunman and everything. But this was another shocker for the world, that the accused assassin was killed by Jack Ruby. So there's another big historic moment we lived through. And then, I think it was on Monday, because the whole world shut down, or at least the United States did. I think they had, if my memory serves me right, I think on Monday is when they had the funeral for John Kennedy. And there's a picture of Jackie and Caroline and John, and I think it's Robert Kennedy behind him. And then, there's that famous picture of John saluting that day. But that was just so moving for a little kid to go through all that as a 10-year-old kid. But those are my memories. And one thing that Ken and I never did do over this whole time, up until we were interviewed in 2013, we never ever shared what we thought or what we felt or what we remember until we were conducting the interview. And we both looked at each other and thought, this is the first time I ever heard what you remember. And there's a lot of friends of mine that are my age that remember where they were on November the 22nd, 1963. There's friends that were at Castleberry Elementary School. They had taken them out to get along River Oaks Boulevard to wave at the motorcade. There were other people that are friends of mine that were downtown that saw the motorcade. But just a historic day, not only for Fort Worth, not only for Dallas, not only for Texas, but the United States and the whole world. So that is my recollection of the day I shook hands with the President of the United States. Let me know, just make some comments on Facebook or on YouTube about where you were when you heard that John Kennedy was killed. This is Rick, and this is a little story time on the 60th anniversary of the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. We'll see you Tuesday morning on Hometown Heroes.